Well, Monday is going to be an important day, and a lot of focus will be squarely on India, with the finance minister presenting his annual budget. So investors, they're going to be looking out for the impact on markets around the world. Don't miss out on our global coverage of this key event live from London, only on CNBC TV 18.
IRB Budget 2016. Now or never, on 29th February, only on CNBC TV 18.
Let me now move to what you talk about in the survey, and you've articulated this as the twin balance sheet challenge. One, of course, is what we're seeing as far as the public sector banking system is concerned, and the other is what we're seeing as far as private sector balance sheets, which continue to be broken, something that you'd articulated in your previous survey as well. And you've put down a prescription. You call it the 4 R's. That's recognition, recapitalization, resolution, and reform. You've said that it has to happen in a certain sequence. Other people that we've spoken to believe that it needs to happen simultaneously. But as far as the recapitalization plan is concerned, we understand it could be about 30 to 35,000 crores, higher than the 25,000 crores that the government had spoken of. Will that be enough, you think, to try and address the current situation?
See, I think that, we've made a great start on this, right? The RBI is rightly saying that we need to, really come clean on how much stressed assets we have in the system. But I think
do you see more pain coming for the banking sector, given the recognition issue that they're grappling with today?
Well, I don't know the insides of the banks, but markets do seem to be thinking that things are, there could be more write-offs and so on. So I don't know the details, but I think part of the problem, which is what I think why the R's, and especially the second R, is very important, is that it's one thing to recognize, but unless you have a solution in terms of what you do, then the banks will get in trouble, and that's why I think you find prices of banks have really been beaten down. So I think what we're saying is that therefore, all the R's need to come together, and especially the resources needs to come, and we need to find resources from everywhere in the public sector balance sheet, and so whether the current strategy is adequate, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I do think we need a lot of resources to solve the problem.
Since we're talking about resources, one of the ideas that you talk about in the survey is how the RBI can play a contributor as far as raising resources are concerned, and provide that for the recapitalization process. Has this been discussed in any official form or fashion within the government?
I mean, this is. I mean, people have known this about the RBI, and there have been discussions in the past on this. So people are aware. I mean, and what the survey is saying is that it's just bringing that, into even more prominence by talking about how well capitalized our RBI is compared to other central banks around the world. So, but I just want to make clear that this is something that has been discussed in the past. This is something that should be on the table, and this is something that has to be done. Whatever is done has to be done completely cooperatively between the RBI and this, because I mean has there been any consultation with the RBI on this matter so far? I mean, there are always we always have Raghu and I keep discussing things all the time. So at formal, informal levels it happens all the time.
Okay, let me then ask you about the resolution part of the R's and the reform part of the R's. And you say in the survey that there are many options here, including creating bad banks to implement the 4 R's. Now, I know that there's been a lot of speculation on whether this is going to be something that the government will take forward. There's again a divided house on whether this is the right approach or the wrong approach at this point in time. It's interesting that you talk about bad banks in the survey, because yesterday the Minister of State for Finance, Jayant Sinha, seemed to suggest that there is no proposal to consider a bad bank at this point in time. So where do things currently stand?
See, again, this is an idea that's been, batted about, and I think is, various people are discussing this. And remember that, the survey is an ideas document. It's not necessarily a document of what might or might not happen in the short run. But I think given that this problem has been there for a long time, before, the twin balance sheets, given that, it's only slowly unwinding itself, I think all ideas are and should be on the table, and this is one of them, and we will be discussing this going forward, as we will be other ideas, as we should.
So the bad bank idea is very much on the table?
I think as an idea, we're all discussing it, yeah.
So if I were to ask you, in terms of immediate priorities to try and address the crisis that we're seeing in the banking system, as well as to try and alleviate the pain that we're seeing as far as the private sector balance sheet issue is concerned, what would those 2 or 3 things be that you believe the government needs to move on immediately?
Well, I think that, the bankruptcy court is very important for the third hour, resolution. That's very important. I think that, also the power sector, which was part of, Uday's scheme, is going to be, help in that direction. The steel sector is under stress, and I think we're considering, we've taken a lot of measures on steel.
On the duty front?
Yeah, on the duty front, to improve the balance sheet of that. But, I think we do need to, and for example, take something like Dabhol, the project, just, maybe just project by project we figure out, who takes what haircuts, and coming to that, so that because I think resolution cannot just be about selling assets. It also has to be about rehabilitating assets, so that there's a lot of value still locked in them, and we need to extract that.
So would you say that rehabilitation will be a key priority as far as the government is concerned?
Yeah, it's ongoing, absolutely, it's ongoing. Because remember, all the stalled projects, the government is kind of really slowly and grinding its way. It's a very difficult problem, but addressing them project by project, that's going to be part of addressing the twin balance sheet problem.
Okay, a final comment from you on, again, this divide that seems to be playing out on dealing with the NPA problem. There is Deepak Parekh camp that believes that the Reserve Bank's prescription at this point in time will lead to comatose banks, something that the former Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, also seems to agree with, says that the intent of the RBI is right, but perhaps the prescription at this point in time is a bit severe and harsh. Where would you stand on how things are playing out today?
I mean, I think our response would be that you have to look at all of this together, that the diagnosis is one part of it, that's the recognition part, but it has to be backed up with all these others. So it has to be a package, and it has to be done as a package.
Let me move then from the twin balance sheet challenge and talk to you about the Chakravyuh challenge that you also talk about. And of course, it's easy to enter, perhaps not that easy to enter, but it's absolutely impossible to exit in India. The bankruptcy code is just one aspect that we need to deal with, and as and when it goes through Parliament is a separate issue altogether. But again, let me ask you, in the immediate term, what needs to be the priority to address the Chakravyuh challenge? You've listed a bunch of things here in this survey. How would you prioritize them?
The problem is pretty pervasive, right? And I think, therefore, to say any one is, there are lots of issues. There's, we talk about fertilizer, there's civil aviation, the public sector banks and the corporates, power, which is being addressed. I think there's no one. I think we just have to work on all fronts, because it is a systemic issue, and I think that if we can work on it, but of course the actions have to be taken sector by sector. But I mean, no one sector. You have to work on all fronts.
Speaking of looking at things sectorally, and you also talk about the need to move towards privatization, which again this government talked about, but hasn't taken forward in any meaningful fashion at all. We haven't even gone down the road of strategic disinvestment just yet. So you believe that that is something that we now need to see much more aggressive, vigorous action on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that strategic disinvestment is a priority, will be a priority, and
but
I think
it's been a on the priority bucket list for a while now. For the last 2 years, we haven't seen anything move.
See, I think that I think one tends to underestimate the challenges of strategic disinvestment. I think it is a hard one. It's not that people have some principal problem with strategic disinvestment. The problem is a hard one. There may be land issues, there may be labor issues, there may be all kinds of issues. So I think that it's something that we have to again grind our way through slowly. But I think we need to come up with a policy of that will kind of define how we go about strategic disinvestment more broadly.
Okay, let me talk to you about, the chapter that perhaps has got a lot of attention, especially as far as the Aam Aadmi is concerned, where you talk about bounties for the well-off and how you estimate those benefits on the account of small savings, subsidies on cooking gas, railways, power, aviation, gold, kerosene, amount to about 1 lakh crores. And you believe that it is time now for the government to take some bold measures as far as all of this is concerned.
Yeah, I think that...
You believe that there will be takers for the recommendations that you've made?
You see, the one way to think about all this is that, often, transparency or shedding light on the problem, I think, is the first step. No one knew. We didn't know certainly before we started this, and my colleagues, have worked on this. We didn't know, for example, how much these things amounted to. And remember, this 1 lakh crores is just on 7 policies. It's not the universe of things. Yesterday, someone was saying, you haven't taken into account, cheap and free power in agriculture, for example, right? And water and canal and stuff. But I think that that chapter wanted to make 2 points, I think, very important points to kickstart the debate. One is how big these bounties are for the well-off. Yeah? The second thing is something that we wanted to say is that whenever we rely on tax breaks, to kind of provide incentives, we have to be clear who benefits from the tax breaks. It's the people who pay the taxes in the first place, and those people are not the middle class, not the rich, but the very rich. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. And this is again a horizontal problem. Everyone wants tax breaks. This is, the exemptions, Raj, is pervasive. We said that in the GST report, taxes forgone are huge. And to the credit of the government, on the corporate tax side, we now have a roadmap for this. When we get the GST, presumably, we can get that part of it cleaned up. And then on the individual taxes as well. So I think this is, it's pervasive, and therefore we have to chip away on all fronts. But
do you believe that there is political will to start to chip away on all fronts?
Well, I think the corporate taxes are one example.
Yes,
but then if the GST comes in, that's going to be another important vehicle for addressing these bounties problems.
Okay, so you believe that we could move, but on things like, and you talk about that, reforms within the fertilizer sector to try and target the fertilizer subsidy better. We've already seen the move towards DBT, which has resulted in about, I think, a 24,000 crore rupee savings on LPG, for instance. Do you see this budget moving more vigorously in that direction to try and target subsidies better and save on costs?
See that the whole JAM agenda is an ongoing process. And I think that the infrastructure is being built up in JAM. So that's one of the big successes. If you look at the Jan Dhan accounts, the increase, that's like 3-5 lakh crore accounts a day. It's incredible. Aadhaar beneficiary enrollment, mobile penetration. So these are the ingredients. And so that's being rolled out. So this is happening on an ongoing basis. Now we have to decide, and of course, there's a phrase which we use in the survey. There are 1 million mutinies taking place, in the sense that, DBT is being tried in seeds in Uttar Pradesh, and food and kerosene in Andhra. So all this needs to come together. And then there is a next stage, which is, we say fertilizers and government transfers are also very susceptible to this. So I think the JAM agenda is something that, is going really very well, and it's, it can be pushed even further along.
All eyes are going to be on India as it gets ready to unveil that big budget. So, as we operate and live in this global market and global economy, these decisions, like the one in India, are going to have ripple effects all over the world. And at CNBC, we're going to track those effects all the way from Singapore to London to right here in New York in the United States. So stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for all the details about how it's going to affect you and your money.
IRB Budget 2016, now or never, on 29th February, only on CNBC TV 18.